Okay, you got the preview. We think about things that are incomplete. We think about the improbable, maybe even the singular event, and try to defend it as having great importance, potentially overriding importance. We think about transitions. We need to bridge the gap, as it were, to understand what happened in the past. We think about limits, extremes. I try to define what I do, and one phrase that I come up with continually for, especially when talking to younger kids, is adventure with a purpose. That's what I felt when I walked in that museum. I told you I did. I felt a sense of excitement. The feeling of discovery was palpable, and it was wrapped up with so many different things: travel, science, art. One thing that is a constant in good science is hard work. First there's adventure, and this is someone crossing the Sahara for the first time in their life, and there's a sense of playfulness about science. This is your MC at a more arduous moment in her career. There's hard work. I don't care if you're in a white lab coat out in the middle of the Sahara, there's a lot of hard work that goes into science. We didn't know how hot it was because our thermometers only went to 125. And it may not be temperature, it may be a jealous colleague. It may be inadequate equipment. There's all sorts of hurdles. One thing it's likely going to involve is teamwork. And I couldn't have moved the millions of pounds of earth around here and there without a lot of eyes and a lot of teamwork. Where does it begin, my field? Go out to a place like this, Sahara. Look at that. There's a camp if you've got really good eyes over there. How do you find something? How do you make a discovery in paleontology? You've got to see it, but you can never see the whole thing. If you see the whole thing, then time has seen that whole thing a lot before, long before you have, and it's fragmentary and eroded. The best way to make a discovery is to see the corner of something, but then you have to visualize what you can't see. And these encyclopedic images are passing through our head time and time again. Here we are, the early dinosaur beds, and we're wondering what it takes to make a discovery. This one was made just a tooth or two showing at the surface before we realized what we had actually found. I'm going to give you two examples of, I'm going to take it, this clock is off. I'm going to go with my own wristwatch. Okay, I'm going to give you two examples of one I just announced and one that we're working on to give you some idea of what we're involved with. We found this thing, this early dinosaur, Eodromius, Badlands, in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Months, years it took to visualize what this animal was about, casting, molding, to properly communicate it, to put it together, to see it in 3 dimensions, and ultimately to reconstruct it for the public. This, not purely whim, but rather built on top of a cast of the actual material, following all the traces we could to understand whether it was scaled, feathered, bristled, whatever. Here's another example. This is what I'm going to come out with soon. Here's the moment of discovery. We couldn't see anywhere near the whole skeleton, but we felt we had something important. And if we could turn these lights, I don't know if you can see out there better than I can see up here. It's a little raptor of some kind. Hind limbs like an emu, forelimbs, and you see it, they're twisting around like an armadillo or something that digs. It's an emu-rillo. We don't have anything like this living today. How could you convince a scientist that you get something that runs at lightning speed and digs like an armadillo? You really have to visualize it. You have to see what these things do and what they look like. Now, my art began in high school. I drew this, and psychologists would call it monocular depth cues. I was good at shadow, atmospheric effect, all these things I didn't even know. I was good at it. It was my grandfather. It turned me around. I got into college not far from here. This transition was difficult for me. Understanding that art could be something more, that there was a meaning beyond what was in front of your nose, that imitating 3 dimensions and 2 dimensions was not the only thing, that you could look at a life model and see through to something inside, to express something beyond just what was in front of your nose, but at the essence of something. I eventually gave up brushes and decided that since art is 30,000 years old as a record. The first paintings, these people didn't have canvas. I'm just going to try to get to the essence of human form. These people weren't doing monocular depth cubes and what they were symbolizing. It was something more important, something essential about their lives, about the animals around them. Eventually tried to create rock surfaces, carve into it literally, gave up on brushes. Now, this comes from a journal. Niels Bohr was known to have said, I see the time's going backwards, Niels Bohr was known to have said that Cubism really influenced, or certainly helped him to understand the particle, the wave, whatever was going on in deep atomic structure. This was written in a journal, very sympathetic. The future of science is art. It's hard to believe that a work of abstract art might have actually affected the history of science. Cubism seems to have nothing in common with modern physics. When we think about the scientific process, a specific vocabulary comes to mind: objectivity, experiments, facts. In the passive tense of the scientific paper, we imagine a perfect reflection of the real world. And I put this in italics. Paintings can be profound, but they are always pretend. This, to me, fundamentally misunderstands not only science, what science is about, but also what art is about. Let me take you on a little journey of some of the discoveries that I've made. Here was a site. I raised hundreds of thousands of dollars and risked my career to bring a team back to this spot in the middle of the desert, and all I could see at the surface was that. But I had an intuition, and I had some facts that led me to believe that there was much more under the ground. Some of the students couldn't believe it. You came all the way back for this, and then when we dug, we came out with tons and tons of bone. That is not a single object. That's a composite. In reality, it doesn't exist. It belongs to 3 or 4 skeletons. This, no one had ever seen a spinosaur before. We had to put together a skull that had the proportions of a crocodile. It was so long it didn't look like it belonged, but we had to follow the bones, follow our clues, and put it together. This thing, this gigantic skull found with my wife on the cliffside of Morocco, the edge of the Sahara Desert, came in hundreds of pieces. We didn't even know they belonged to the skull. We certainly didn't imagine we had found, even after taking it off the continent, a gigantic T-Rex-sized beast until we put it all together. This, I had to visualize with CAT scanning, preparation, until I could ultimately understand how the jaws of this animal actually work. We came up with a whole new way of chewing for this dinosaurian nutcracker. It wasn't chewing when I saw it. How about this animal? A Mesozoic cow. This reconstruction really captures the notion that this animal was, in fact, with its muzzle close to the ground. It was so fragile. We found the skull pulled apart. We couldn't actually cast the pieces. We had to CAT scan it, reflect it, put it back together until we could see the mug of this thing for the first time. And was it a shocker? The endocast, the brain, that doesn't exist either. That's going beyond. That's from the hollow inside the skull. The ear region, reconstructed painfully from slice after slice of CT scan. How about this? A giant crocodile, its jaws on the ground. To imagine the whole thing, we didn't have the body, we had parts. We had to go to modern crocodilians and understand how they scaled when they got larger. We had to capture the very largest ones to realize what this animal looked like, 40 feet long. This is super croc. What about its relatives? This is more recent work, just out. They had limbs that were upright. I felt likely they were gallopers. Gallopers like this recent crocodile. Coming into the picture on the left, northern Australia, Darwin. You have to watch your fingers when you let these guys go. But when they go, they go. This is slow speed film of a galloping crocodile. There's only one species that gallops today. This is it under certain conditions. And what shocked me to no end was it was wonderful seeing this thing gallop. It's the closest I could get to my fossil. But what it did when it hit the water shocked me. It turned into a fish, side to side. And I realized what I was looking at. What I was looking at was an evolutionary transition that I was going to pin down when I got back to my office. 200 million years ago, they readopted a fish-like style of swimming when they hit the water. And this one species is the only one where you can see both modes of progression in operation alive today. Because other animals that walk upright, ourselves included, do not walk and run like primitive fish, like swimming like reptiles. They have a very unbelievable system, the mammalian system. Here we see it in a cheetah. It's like a 4-wheel drive, independent system. The shoulder is all loosened up. Unlike the crocodile, it is completely the body, the momentum, in prey and predator alike, at high speeds, at turning corners, is absolutely level. They can do that with a loose shoulder girdle. When did this appear, I wondered, and I'm working on right now? Well, I entered the story in the middle of the Gobi Desert, Mongolia, where I saw a white speck. But imagine that maybe with that suture, it was a small mammal. That's where this change occurred 100 million years ago, but nobody had found the shoulder girdle. But our specimen, see how small it is? That's my thumb there, preserved it. And I reconstructed it upright, but the gurus of the day said, no. Now, it walked like a frog. And so I thought, how could I convince? Words, long papers, nothing would convince them. And then I thought of a way. I CAT scanned it. I segmented it. I printed it the size of a big cat. And I put it together physically in the bottom of your screen, visualizing our hypotheses, profoundly showing the difference between them. That is science. How about this? Human sight. This. I saw dimly out in the field what might be a triple burial. Now we're only 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 years ago. This turned out to be 6,000 years old. I couldn't lift it because I didn't know what was under it. And yet I had to collect it somehow, complete, so that I could discover that in the lab. And sure enough, we got back to the lab, put this back together like nobody has before. This is the most posed burial in prehistory. You're awestruck when you see something like that in the desert. And when we prepared it from both sides and reconstructed it vertically so you can walk around it, we found points on the other side. They were never used, it turned out. They were salted as offerings in a grave with a woman and her 2 children, arms and legs intertwined. It was a symbolic burial. We found evidence of pollen clusters. This is visualization. My life's work, evolution of dinosaurs, what some might say, is built on a tree. That tree summarizes thousands of characters in worlds that are changing and migrating millions of years ago. It's sort of like this. It's based on finding the common characters that link images together. You have sort of built in your brain the ability to look at human faces like that. It takes us years to figure that out with dinosaur bones, to figure 2 species over 2 other species that might be linked, but it's all the same. We're trying to figure out with words what happened. This is a way to visualize in 3 dimensions the evolution of dinosaurs, that tree, as the continents broke apart. It's a 3-dimensional problem, not a 2-dimensional problem, to visualize that. And ultimately for a computer program to work that out. How about this? This isn't a program, this isn't a screen grab. This is a program I would like a programmer to build. I published it because I knew it would stimulate that if they could understand what it was that we wanted. How about this? Perhaps the most fundamental thing I will give to systematics is a grammatical understanding of the words we use to put together those evolutionary trees. And it, visualized as a tree, like a Chomskyan grammar tree, I think is the easiest way for people to understand what it is I'm talking about in the lines of text that make our... Well, visualization, we are primates. We have 50 million years of visualization behind us. Our eyes aren't separate organs like a kidney or a liver. It's actually part of our brain that's pinched down, made clear to see the world. It projects back and then it projects here and there and everywhere. A huge part of our brain is devoted to visualizing things. Here's another quote from that same journal. In an article on the meaning of observation, STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, needs something to give it some steam, an A for art between the engineering. It goes on. What if America approached innovation with more than just technology? What if it, just like STEM, it's made up of science, technology, engineering, and math? What if we had something like IDEA, made up of intuition, design, emotion, and art? Somehow these are not disconnected, because if I go back to this slide at the top, I just spent a lot of time talking about visualization, that science is, a good part of it is about visualization, but I thought that's what art was too. So, could it go the other way? Could we look at art sort of from a more scientific perspective? I'm just going to give you one small example, a humorous one, to say, yes, it can go in reverse. Giacometti, one of my favorite artists, I was curious, he did a lot of weird things in his day as a surrealist, but the one we have at the Art Museum looks like this. his mature style, the elongate statuette forms. I was sort of curious what he was doing to the human body, being a professor of human anatomy at the university here. And it turns out, I got down measuring, very simple global transformation, 2 times lengthening. It wasn't that he took the legs and stretched them out. No, he stretched everything out 2 times this way, or minus 2 times this way. It was a global transformation. I don't know what he was taking, but he got this image in his head, and it's global. There's a lot of other things, texture and so on, but I thought, did anybody notice this? No, not a word about it. But that really is what he was doing with human form. So I thought I would take a dinosaur with the human proportions like this Eoraptor, got a tail, we don't have as much of a tail, and do the same thing. After all, it's a biped like humans, so I lengthened all the limbs twice, put it together, and brought people to see it. Jacometisaurus, I call it. An interesting way to look at my animal artistically. I had a lot of fun doing that. But seriously, what I realized after 20 years of discovery and realization of discovery, it's a long process, which is really heavy on visualization. I walked out of one studio 20 years ago and I walked into another one. And I really feel quite at home in this studio that we call science, but it really is in large measure involving many of the same things. I think about this when we think and work with kids who don't know what they want to be, including some of the undergraduates here, but especially those kids in the neighborhoods around Chicago, because the idea of science is something very dry, sometimes technical, forbidding in many ways. What if you describe science as adventure? That's the way I feel about science. What if you describe science as visualization at its core, which is what I think it is, a lot of science is? Then maybe we'd have a lot more scientists in the next generation because we certainly need them. Thank you very much.